Hello, friends, and welcome back to another episode of Mark My Brain. In today's episode, I'll be focusing on a phenomenon I have noticed recently in my own life, in lives of people around me, and I call it the false sense of progression in life. And what exactly do I mean by that? Well, I'm sure it probably happened to you too, but basically sometimes in life we focus on things and activities, and after a while we just realize, wait a minute, this isn't like going anywhere. I'm just wasting my time, wasting my potential. What is this? And more specifically, I want to focus on those activities that on a surface look like they do help you in some way. They help you grow, they help you progress in life. However, in reality, they are not. They are only masquerading as such. And some examples of that can be, for example, video games. You get a sort of sense of accomplishment and progress from video games, right? There's level progression and you can sink hundreds of hours into them, but in 99.999% of all cases, they don't help you progress in life in any way or form. Or focusing too much on self-improvement, just watching hours and hours of online courses and videos, booking seminars, reading self-improvement books without actually doing anything from those seminars, courses, books, and just reading and consuming the content. At some point you have to realize this also doesn't lead anywhere. And the same can be think, for example, when you're, starting a business, you have an idea that you want to develop, you can spend so much time just planning, reiterating ideas, brainstorming, making remakes to the original idea, preparing. But again, if you spend too much time in this preparation phase, it doesn't help you anymore. It goes nowhere, and you can again spend and burn so much time and energy on this planning and preparing, but in reality you are stagnating, right? And in all of these cases, you get some sort of feeling of progression from them, right? Or growth, I would say. So where is the line? What is the issue here, right? That's what I want to focus on today. So in all of those cases, you spend so much time on activities, but nothing is happening. And the reason why we, or at least why I think we sometimes have a tendency to fall into these patterns of just, focusing on those activities that in reality don't help us in any way. I think there are several reasons. I think it can be due to fear of uncertainty. You're staying in sort of your comfort zone, I would say. In certain cases, of course, it can be also cheap dopamine, for example, with the video games, right? Or just, comfort in general. So yeah, those are all things that I think can potentially be a factor when talking about why is this happening. And I would also say this whole topic is tied to not only productivity, because of course you want to, when you're trying to be productive, you want to spend your time efficiently. So of course you don't want to spend it on things that don't progress your idea or your life in any way. But it's also a topic that ties to well-being and ambition, I think, as well. And again, I will be drawing a lot from my own personal experience here. But for example, I have noticed periods in my own life where, exactly as I described, I was just focusing too much on things that seemed on a surface that they are even productive, I would say. Let's take an example of the self-improvement bubble. You sort of lock yourself into self-improvement, content, courses, videos, books, etc., it feels like you're doing something productive with your time and with your life. But as I mentioned, after a certain time, there came a point where I sort of realized, maybe I have some new information that I acquired, but truly I am basically in the same place I was before I consumed all of these videos and these books. And it's only when you put into practice, take what you learned in theory into the real world, when some real progression happens. And overall, in general, I would say that I have identified sort of two scenarios, in this whole topic. And these two scenarios, I've nicknamed them beating around the bush, and the second one is simply a substitute. In the first scenario, when you're sort of beating around the bush, I would say you stayed sort of true to the original goal you had, but your brain convinced you to focus on sort of second-tier activities, arguing that you are getting closer to your goal. But in reality, you are only avoiding the main thing, the activity that actually needs to be done in order for you to progress. And this can, for example, be, again, something I've already mentioned, preparations when starting a business or any project in that manner. You need to actually start selling, offering services and products, getting your brand on the market, getting yourself out there for progress to actually occur. But as I've seen, for example, in my own personal life, on people close to me, you can get locked in this preparation phase to the point where you almost become paralyzed to actually try. And you're just, again, reiterating ideas, trying to brainstorm new ways and what else you need to do before you can start. I need to make a better website for my business. I need to prepare more products. I need to prepare marketing materials, etc., etc. But the reality is, you created this list of things that need to be done, and if you want to, it can sort of become endless, right? You can go on and on and on about things that need to be done, and you can never actually start. I think that in this case, I have a feeling that the reason behind this tendency is typically fear. Either of uncertainty, of putting yourself out there, of failure, that will be a big one, I think, or basically just getting out of your comfort zone, because, of course, starting your own business, starting your own project, getting yourself out in the market or whatever it is that falls sort of into this scenario can be scary, especially if you, for example, had some bad experience. So I completely understand how there might be a tendency to focus on those sort of safer activities. You can get that sense of progression, that you're doing something productive, but at the same time, not actually risking anything or not risking failure or rejection, right? So this, I would say, is my explanation for why things happen in this scenario. It's a bit sad, especially when you see it in people that are close to you. You can try to help and convince them that they actually need to do something, not just talk about it, not just prepare it. But ultimately, it has to be them that decides, okay, maybe they're right, I need to do something actually, not just make plans and talk about it and whatever. I need to actually do the stuff that needs to be done. And I don't know what the perfect way to combat this is. I would say in this case, it can be bravery, courage, Discipline, I would say, is also a big help, but at this point I don't have a specific answer. But let's talk about the second scenario. So this was beating around the bush, as I nicknamed it. You sort of still have your mark on what you want to do in reality, but you sort of go around it. You don't actually hit the mark, right? But in the second scenario, I nicknamed substitute, maybe you can guess from the name, it's when your vision kind of gets completely swayed away from your true goals, and you begin spending your time and energy on something completely different, which, however, often offers the artificial sense of progress. It substitutes the real meaning you would get from chasing your original goal with this artificial sense of progress and accomplishment. So you might not even notice the stagnation in your real life. And again, something that I've talked about, video games, right? I think this is a perfect example that falls under this category. You're leveling up in video games, you are, getting higher scores and progressing your character, whatever it might be. It feels like progress, and of course, in the world of, that game, it is progress, and there is a satisfaction that comes out of it, but it shouldn't and mustn't substitute the real progression in your own life, right? It should be only a leisure time activity. It shouldn't substitute some real meaning or sense of accomplishment in your own life. And I think here, more than fear, the reason that people fall in this mode of living is usually comfort or convenience, and cheap dopamine might also be a topic that's tied to this closely, especially nowadays with all the technologies and apps and oftentimes games as well, designed in a way to sort of keep you hooked, to give you that dopamine hit, to give you that sense of progression and accomplishment. So it might be harder or more difficult to combat it nowadays than it was, 20, 30, 40 years ago. I don't know, I wasn't alive back then, but I can imagine that being the case. So, yeah, but of course that's not an excuse to be content with it. And again, I don't know exactly how to combat it or break through, but again, I would advise maybe for discipline and remembering your true ambitions, staying true to your original mark and really asking yourself if you are going in your life where you want to be going, if you're moving, if you're not stagnating, right? So those are the two scenarios I sort of identified when I reflected or thought about the instances of this false sense of progress happening in my own life and in lives of people around me. And I would say that in both of these scenarios, there are some few key principles that I think are crucial if you want to break through this false progression. Again, it's just my opinion, something that resolution I came to, but maybe you will find them helpful as well. I think what is very, very important here is being honest with yourself, and that be about what you want, where you are in life, what are you doing, and if it brings you closer to the finish line you've originally drawn for yourself, if you're not wasting your time, right? And what's tied to it is honest reflection. You need to do some reflecting in order to realize you might be stagnating or you might be wasting your time. So it might be a good idea to put aside some time, either, once a month or whatever the time frame for you might be, to sort of think about your goals and your position in life, if you're doing what you can to go for those goals, and if you're not wasting time in any big way, right? Setting goals you truly want is also important, right? But sometimes we as people just don't know, especially when you're young in your 20s, right? Which is, I think, most of my listeners. If you don't know what you want in life, it's always better to decide to do something that at least, sounds meaningful or sounds interesting. It's always better than to figuratively tread water and stagnate and stay in one place and try to distract yourself with, again, cheap dopamine and social media or whatever. It's always better to have some goal in real life and try to progress towards it. I would say if you don't have a goal in your life that you could really focus on, maybe you can start with sport. I think that's a great idea in like 99% of cases, because you will get healthier, you will get stronger, you will probably gain confidence, and you will learn that if you put effort into chasing some goal, you will probably get the rewards, and it's as close to the perfect effort/reward system you can get, I would say. Because if you go, or if you decide to go to the gym, you can see the weights you are lifting going up. And that gives you the sense of accomplishment. I'm getting stronger, I can do more. And it's very important. Maybe again, some of the factors, or one of the factors why we sometimes might fall into this false sense of progression or focus too much on the wrong activities is because we've never truly had the true sense of accomplishment or progression in life. Maybe there are some of you that feel like their whole life has been wasted, right? Their teen years or even your 20s, you're just wasting time. There is no sense of progression. So you don't sort of know that feeling. You don't know what you should be chasing. And to that, again, I would say just decide for some goal and then truly commit to it. I think that's really a key here. And what will help you along the way, and what is the key, the last key principle I have written down for this, is discipline. I think it will be a big help in either of these situations I've described. Deciding what you're going to do and then sticking to it. It's something that's a really valuable skill in life. I have seen it come through for me in many areas of my life, either uni, work, sports, whatever it might be. It's always useful to try to develop your self-discipline. And I would say, like, all of these factors or principles I talked about, being honest with yourself, reflecting on your life and your position in life and your goals, setting some meaningful goals or goals that at least sound meaningful to you, or you might deem them interesting, and then following through with the discipline. It's all of sort of tied together in some package, or at least that's what my intuition says. And in general, I would say the key probably lies, as with many things, in balance, right? I talked a lot about the video games, for example. It might seem like I hate video games, they're just waste of time. That's not the case. Like, I'm perfectly fine with video games. I also sometimes play video games. But the key takeaway here should be to not get the sort of meaning in life and the sense of progression and sense of accomplishment from these artificial sources, but from some real thing, like work, some art, or whatever you truly want to do and whatever truly feels meaningful in your life if you think about it deeply. I don't think playing video games for hours and hours and hours is probably that thing. It's fine as a leisure activity, right? As is many things, but it shouldn't take over your life. That's what I'm trying to say. And I would also say, like, this whole topic is very, or not very, but it's personal for me, Because as I mentioned in the beginning, I've seen myself fall into these tendencies. I've seen people around me that are close to me, be locked under this false spell of progression in life, stagnating sort of, and then being frustrated about it, but being unable to connect the dots that they are actually not doing the thing that needs to be done, the thing that would bring them the true sense of accomplishment. And I've seen them waste so much time and energy, and of course maybe happiness as well, right? So it feels very, very frustrating to me, because in the end it's just wasting your potential. And I think that's one of the saddest things I can see in life, when there are people that sort of just go through life wasting their potential. It's also one of my biggest fears, to just be at the end of the life and knowing I could have done more, I could have tried and experienced much, much more, and I simply didn't, because, I don't know, because fear, because comfort, these things. It really is scary to me, and when I see it happening to other people, I just feel it's really sad. So if anything, this episode might serve as sort of a cautionary warning to you. Don't waste your potential, please. Yeah, if you take anything away from this episode, let it be that. Don't waste your potential. Focus on things that are truly meaningful. Don't be content with just some cheap dopamine and artificial sense of accomplishment, but truly take control of your life. I also think like agency is a big thing in this topic as well, but yeah, that's another conversation. I think this episode has come to sort of a natural end, so I hope you found something interesting. Again, this was one of those episodes where I just sort of presented to you my thoughts and how I thought about this topic from my very personal point of view. If you have any ideas or questions, or you want to share anything, of course, feel free to reach out and tell me. I'm always interested. And until next time, take care of yourself, and bye.